Do you ever wonder how long humans have been dealing with sustainability issues? Well, in this video, I'm going to go back 8,000 years. And be sure you watch to the end because I'm going to discuss an event that I believe changed the trajectory of human history with regard to sustainability forever and for the better. Welcome everyone, my name is Holly Fortenberry and this is Beyond Sustainable Living. On this channel, I discuss and teach sustainability concepts and practices to help people live a more abundant, connected, and sustainable life. If you're new here and like this topic, please consider subscribing. Humans have dealt with the struggles and the concepts of sustainability ever since we left the hunter-gatherer nomadic life during the Neolithic Revolution and settled into agrarian societies whose economy centered around farming. The historic people and events I'm going to discuss in this video are Mesopotamia, the Aztec Empire, India, Bhutan, René Descartes, and the European Enlightenment, George Hartig and John Stuart Mill, Henry David Thoreau and John Muir, the Canadian Commission on Conservation, Bretton Woods Conference, and Rachel Carson. And at the end, I'm going to talk about an event that's a surprise. So stay tuned for that. One of the most well understood of these agrarian societies was Mesopotamia, in current-day Iraq and Iran. The Fertile Crescent is the boomerang-shaped region in the Middle East that was home to some of the earliest human civilizations. Also known as the Cradle of Civilization, this area was the birthplace of a number of technological innovations, including writing, the wheel, agriculture, water management, and the use of irrigation. These innovations also led to issues we now associate with sustainability. Beginning around 6000 BC, people of the region began digging simple, small-scale canals for irrigating small plots of land. By 3000 BC, canals had become enormous in scale, transforming the landscape and even being used for transportation between cities. Saddled with the huge responsibility of their upkeep, neighboring kings would even work together to maintain their central infrastructure. There was a downside, however, to the prosperity water management brought. Booming populations outstripped the fertility of the land. Stagnant water bred disease, and variability in the landscape, weather, and use led to conflict over land access and rights, similar issues that we see today. The World Health Organization today estimates that more than 3.4 million people die from water-related diseases every year. Experts wonder how we can feed 7 billion humans, and conflict over water rights continues among individual farmers and even entire nations. While the people of Mesopotamia may not have solved these issues, it seems that in some ways they may have had more sustainable thinking. From symbolically decorated vases to the nature of some of their gods, these people recognized at a practical and spiritual level how fundamentally important it is to have reliable access to clean water. Enki, the god of drinkable water, with streams and fish pouring forth from his shoulders, was seen as one of humanity's greatest friends. The Mesopotamians were not the only ones with advanced practices. The Aztec Empire had advanced systems not seen in their time anywhere else. When Europeans arrived in the early 1500s, the Aztecs had one of the largest empires at that time, with a population over 200,000. With a massive size and impressive organization and cleanliness, the Aztec Empire could be considered one of the more sustainable empires in history. The Aztecs maintained systems of organization of resources that would be admired in today's society. The foundation of their sustainability comes down to their use of small artificial islands known as Chinampas that they built to accommodate the growing population. The Aztec Chinampas covered over 12 square kilometers or 7 square miles and were highly productive due to the high amount of water and sunlight in the area. The productivity was further increased by recycling of nutrients. The Aztecs had a method for disposing organic wastes that would fertilize the crops. Human excrement was often used and highly valued in the Aztec society. Urine was also stored and sold, Reusing excrement prevented it from being released into the environment and prevented the pollution of the lakes surrounding the Chinampas. Littering and dumping waste was highly frowned upon in Aztec society. Wastefulness was not tolerated at all, and in some cases individuals would be sentenced to death for being wasteful. They even had a system for recovering recyclable waste. They also maximized recycling by burning certain materials and then disposing their remainder in the Chinampas, which helped fertilize the soil. The Aztec Empire had managed to create and maintain what we would consider today a sustainable materials management system, which is considered the most ideal method for managing waste, conserving resources, and protecting the environment. Although they had an ideal system of sustainability, the empire did not survive the militant conquest of the Spaniards. After conquering the Aztecs, the Spaniards dismantled the waste management system, drained all of the lakes, and built Mexico City over the land. With their constant reuse and recycling of organic minerals, they minimized their impact on the environment. Because their waste was also considered a resource, they showed no signs of exhausting these resources, which is a major issue in the topic of sustainability today. In addition to their sustainable waste management practices, they also had a more sustainable mindset regarding the natural world. For indigenous Mesoamericans, the experience and consciousness of the animal world were very different from that of the modern Western city dweller. Many a city dweller has lost the one link with the surrounding world that could be most enriching to their well-being, the capacity for wonder, admiration, and reverence for the natural world. The indigenous person, by contrast, thought about him or herself as being closely linked to animals, plants, rocks, and even objects created by people, to which were attributed a spirit and will, similar to that of humans. For the indigenous person, the natural world was not something to be manipulated, exploited, and destroyed for humans at their pleasure, as it has been for Western culture. Rather, it was a sphere populated by supernatural powers and forces with which people had to forge ties necessary for the survival of humankind and for the conservation of nature, and as the context in which sacred beings manifested themselves. Thus, the consciousness of that unknown sphere was a religious experience. For the Aztecs, animals embodied divine energy because they possessed vital forces and physical powers beyond that of humans, such as flying, having claws, and surviving underwater. In particular, some animals were considered to be extraordinary beings that revealed the sacrosanct. They therefore became symbols of natural bodies and elements such as stars and rain, and of the levels of the universe in which divine forces materialized. With sustainability being a prominent issue today, applying some of the theories and viewpoints that the Aztec Empire used regarding waste, adaptability, resources, and the animal world could help reduce the massive effect that modern-day society has on the environment. Sustainable practices have existed throughout history all the way across the planet as well. In India, sustainability has always been a core component of Indian culture. Its philosophy and values have underscored a sustainable way of life. For example, the yogic principle of aparigraha. In Hinduism and Jainism, aparigraha is Sanskrit. It's the virtue of non-possessiveness, non-grasping, or non-greediness, which is a virtue of being non-attached to materialistic possessions, keeping only what is necessary at a certain stage of life. Also in Indian culture, humans and nature share a harmonious relationship, which goes as far as a reverence for various plants and animals. This has aided biodiversity conservation efforts. A great example is of the Bishnoi community in the Jodhpur region, Rajasthan, for whom the protection of wildlife is part of their faith. Another example, the Mesopotamia lion, also called the Asiatic lion, now only has a range in India. Its historic range was across Asia and the Middle East, including Mesopotamia. I wonder if we would have any Asiatic lions left if it were not for India and their harmonious respect for plants and animals. Also, yoga and Ayurveda are perhaps among the most well-known ways of holistic Indian living that contribute to a sustainable life. Eastern philosophies and religions, such as Zen Buddhism, also recognize the connection between humanity and nature, emphasizing that there is no such thing as an independent self, and that all things depend on others for their existence and well-being. For example, strongly influenced by Mahayana Buddhism, Bhutan has enshrined ecological resilience into its constitution, mandating that at least 60% of the nation remain forested. The country is one of just 2 in the world to absorb more carbon than it emits. It measures progress not by gross domestic product GDP, but against, quote, a gross national happiness index, which prioritizes human and ecological well-being over boundless economic growth. I want to do a shout out to Kelsey, Paul P, and ST for requesting that I do this video on the history of sustainability. And I just want to say thanks, guys. This was a really fun video. I learned a lot. And there's going to be a part 2 coming up in a week or 2. So stay tuned for that.
All right. Have a happy week. Bye-bye.